Okay, so today it's still Halloween. So last week we also did a Halloween themed live painting that was jack-o'-lantern. So if you're interested, you will also find it here in the events. You'll find jack-o'-lantern, a skeleton from Theodora. There are, I think, 3 or 4. So do check it out. You might find something that you like. But today it's all about a spooky scene or view, and I shared the reference photo that I'll be basing it on here in the event. So you will also find it later if you haven't yet seen it. And if you haven't yet, I'm just going to show you quickly. So this will be the scene. Okay, so this is just your reference. You don't have to follow each branch down to the last detail. So it's just a guide into how it's going to look like. So you can totally create your own branches. Some, when they create their branches, they make it more curled, or they make it more jagged, or less branches. But the thing to keep in mind is that the more scraggly they look, then it's going to look more spooky, like fingers, gnarly fingers reaching. Okay, so very easy, actually, because it's going to be mostly a lot of dark silhouette against a greenish bluish background. And the nice thing about this is you can totally play around with the colors of your background. You can create different versions. It's up to you. Okay, so today I will now flip the camera down. I haven't finished sketching, but that's fine. So you can see that I'm not really copying the reference photo exactly, just something along the lines of it. Okay, so I'm painting on rough paper today because I'm going to do a lot of washes for the start. So I like the rough paper for this kind of effect. Okay, so if you haven't yet, do also try playing around with your with the different textures of watercolor paper. Okay, so let me again zoom in a bit. Okay, there you go. Sometimes I forget to zoom in and it's too far. Okay, so today I will be using colors from the Vista. Okay, let me see. I'm looking for a greenish bluish vibe, so that's why I picked the Vista, since it has many color greens. But you can totally mix your own greens, and that's fine as long as you have several blues and yellows. Then you can try to mix for the green that you're looking for. I can't seem to find the paper for this. Okay, but anyway, I think you can still see the colors. Lots of greens and blues, and your very essential yellows for painting landscapes, seascapes, things like that. This is exactly for painting different vistas. Okay, so today I will mix blue and green to get this bluish greenish, like spooky background. So I'm trying to not go for an orange background, but you can try that out. I'm going for a more misty, spooky background. So again, if you don't want to cover your moon, you can use tape to cover it, or you can use masking fluid, or you can just paint around it. Okay, so in my case, I'm just going to try to paint around it. So when you do your backgrounds, especially if you're doing a big section, try to prepare as much mixture as you can. So in this case, I'm going to use a separate mixing area and just apply a lot of, add a lot of water to my mixing well. That way I will be prepared. So I will start with my blue. Okay, so I'm going for my deeper blue. This is ultramarine blue. And you want to use a wide flat brush for this so that you can apply it quickly and in wide swatches, but I prefer to prep my colors in advance. And then I'm also going to add some green. I'm going for jade green, so a deep green, because I want the mysterious, scary feel. And then you can always test it out on a separate piece of paper just to see if it's the color you're looking for. In my case, yes. So I like it. Maybe a bit more blue. Came to green. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so I like it. So you don't have to just go for one layer. You can always add another layer later on, up to you. Okay, so in my case, I will now rinse my brush off the color, and then I will wet the surface. So I will do this wet and wet. Okay, so if you have any questions, just ask away. Okay. Don't mind if there's a little bit of blue, as this will be painted with blue. And then I'm just going to paint around the circle. Again, if you don't want to do this, use tape to cover it or masking fluid. Or you can always add the moon later using white gouache. That can be done too. Okay, so it's quite easy because you don't have to worry about painting over the details of the trees since they are black. They will be quite dark and will be painted last. So I don't always use wet on wet, but it's a fun technique to play around with. Okay, now that you have your mixture prepared, you can now add it. So I will keep this area lighter than the rest, but I will dab it like this from the edges. So some rough paper, it's even rougher, so the colors will beautifully spread and sink in areas. So whenever I do stuff like this, I like to play around with my rough paper and see how the pigment reacts to the roughness of the paper, to the texture. Okay, and I will just slowly bring it around the moon. So I'm not going to the edge because I want it to have a soft edge. It's like it's very misty. If it's starting to have a rough, a hard edge, you can always go over it with a wet brush and just soften that edge. Like so. Okay, so you want that. You want the suggestion that it's a misty sky. And also here from the edges. So the color is more concentrated here, and then it lightens as it goes towards here. So this will also be your sort of focal point, like the entrance to the spookiness. So I actually created this composition from various elements because I wanted trees to be framing the entrance. So you can totally create your own composition if you want to. Okay, so I'm just going to allow it the paint to spread here and there on its own, and just use the remaining color to just add more darker areas here and there. And you want this, you want the paint to be moving around the page and, you know, giving it the texture. And then I'm just going over here with whatever leftover paint from the brush. Remember, everything is going to dry lighter. So you might want to add another layer if you find that when it dries it's too light. Okay. So in my case, I don't have the luxury of waiting for it to naturally dry, but when you do this, you do. So you don't have to blow dry it like I will, because the paint will still move around and you will get really beautiful effects that you know, that are just unpredictable. So I'm going to use a blow dryer now, so there will be noise. This will take some time, so I hope you'll bear with me, because I really I wet the whole page, so it's going to be a longer drying time. So amazingly, it has dried. A little bit of wetness there, but that's fine. I need it to be dry, because if it's not, when I do the black trees and the surface is wet, it will create, it will spread, you know, it won't be crisp, and I want the crisp silhouette. So it has to be dry. So don't be impatient when it's your turn to do this. Wait for things to fully dry before working on it. So now I'm just going to soften the edges here, because again, I want the moon not to be hard edged. Okay, so you can totally soften things, don't be afraid. Okay, and I just added a bit of color just to fix the shape. And texture is totally fine. This is the nice thing about this, is when you get all the different textures, it doesn't matter. Actually, you'd want that. In my case, I actually prefer it, because I want that eerie, you know, feeling where some things are brewing in the back. Okay, so all of that will just add to the effect of a spooky view. So I like it. I think the colors are not too light and they work. It's just like a night that's lit by this weird light, and with the moon there. Okay, so the moon, I will leave that for later. Now I'm going to work on the trees. So before that, I'm just going to quickly finish sketching here. So I shared the reference photo. So what I'm doing is I'm just like taking a look at the main branches, because the little ones can totally be up to you later. You can just make the branches go here and there. You don't have to follow the reference photo exactly. I'm just getting the big shapes, and then everything else will be a more relaxed experience. And this way too, you can sketch as dark as you want, and it's okay because it's going to be covered with black. It totally won't show through your paint. So a very chill painting of a scene, and a spooky scene at that. So have you guys been painting Halloween cards? What have you been working on lately? So here I'm just again going for the main big elements. Okay, so again you want all those gnarly, curvy shapes because they really set the mood. Don't make your trees too pretty. The more weird looking they are, the better. Okay, and then you can leave it at that, and then you can start already painting. So for this, you can use your paint gray or your black. In my case, I have black, so I will use black. If you don't want it to be a pure black, then you can mix Prussian blue with it and make it like a deep color instead. Okay, let me just get your paper towels ready so that you also can blot whatever excess liquid you have. You also want to have a rigger brush for this because it's really the best for creating the branches, the thin branches that go here and there. So similar to what we did for the background, you also want to prepare a lot of this so that you don't have to keep mixing and mixing new batches. You'll be using practically the same color for most of your silhouette, so prepare a lot of your mixture. If you have tube paints, then that will be much easier for you. Okay, so in my case, I have a black pan here. So you have to test out your black, okay? Because when you put it, it really looks like it's so deep, but with this amount of water, you will need a lot. So test it out on a piece of paper to see if it's black enough, if it's opaque enough to cover your background. Okay, so I will test it on my paper. Still not. And don't worry, even if you mix too much, you will still be able to use it later on. You just need to reactivate it. So no paint will be wasted. Just leave it there, and when you need it, just re-wet it. Okay, that's the nice thing about watercolor. That is just what I miss when I do acrylics, because with acrylics, they dry like in less than an hour. Okay, so what mediums do you guys like to paint with? Okay, so you'll need, oops, I'll just have it here handy. So I'll start with, of course, the bigger areas. Okay, so let's go for the trunks of the trees. And you can really take your time with this. Have fun. This is a very easy and very fun exercise to do, painting silhouettes. So I start with a number 3 or 4 brush for the bigger areas, and then I change into a rigger brush when I go for the thinner branches. Okay, so again, you don't have to follow your reference photo exactly. I'm basically just looking at the big shapes. And you see I'm doing the lines very erratically. Okay, so take your time so that you don't, regret certain branches that you don't like and things like that. And try to fix the shapes. Okay, so I love it. And I actually forgot to do the one at the back first, which is further, so it's a bit lighter. So I can still do that. I just need to wait for this one to dry so that they don't overlap each other and start to spread. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to a rigger brush so that I can have fun with the tiny branches. Okay, so this is a number 1 rigger from the Fine Line set. So you can have many small branches or you can have fewer. Again, you don't have to follow the reference photo exactly. That is up to you. In my case, I think it would be fun to have all this texture. So I'm fine doing sort of a lot. I'm not sure if I'm going to do as much as the reference photo, but definitely I want the texture. So you see how much easier it is with the rigger. It really makes doing all the branches much easier. And look, makes the branches look more natural as well. It's very easy to create the tapering ends. So you want your hand to be loose. Don't do this. Try to keep it up so that your lines are also more fluid. And I want it to go past so that things are happening beyond the page. And it's fine that some lines become lighter because it also suggests that they are at the back, so not everything is up front. So little things like that help your work look more natural as well. Okay, so before I work on this one, I move to the other one. So you already have one gnarly spooky tree, and things will just slowly come together as you work on each element. So again, I start with the smaller brush, which fell, so let me just get another brush. So you can do the same design, the same elements, and things will change. If you change the color of the background, you can have a more orangey or orange blue background mix for a more Halloweeny color. Okay, that came out a bit too thick, so I will have to adjust it. Okay, so if you find that your branches that you did on top became thicker, just thicken the base where it's springing from and it'll look okay again. So I like that the branches are stretching towards the moon. So it leads the eye to the moon, and the moon illuminates this area. So it's like there's a conversation going on with all your different elements. Okay, let me just check. So these are the thicker branches, and I'm just darkening the areas that are a bit on the gray side. And now I can change brushes again. Oh, hi Dawn. Yeah, sure, of course. As usual, there's always the replay for those who didn't catch the start. So don't worry, you'll catch the replay. And everything is very easy now, so it's actually not a lot of different techniques that you need to remember. It's actually a very, very easy theme today. It may look hard, but it's actually quite easy. I'm sure you guys will have fun doing this. Okay, so some branches covering the moon. So I don't want this to go overboard, just a little bit. I want the moon to still be very visible. So I'm actually taking my time for this section. Now I can relax. I'm past the moon. So even the branches going to the moon are still framing it. Okay, so you have to think about those things. You don't want to overwhelm your moon, that it's covered with too many branches. And again, have fun with the little branches going here and there. So time to just lift your hand away from your paper. Don't rest it, so that you can get more natural looking branches. It's much easier to twist your rigger brush here and there, and just really playing around with how you twist the ends gives you more organic looking lines. So they're twisting, they're overlapping each other. They are very wild and scraggly. So it's actually very therapeutic. I'm just really doing my thin lines here and there. Every now and then I take a look at my reference photo just to see the general shape of things, since I did choose it for the nice trees. So some branches would sort of weave with each other too. So try to have those as well. And go past your paper, okay? Paint out so that it really moves out and away off the picture. And if you want your borders, you should do the borders before you paint, so you have your white crisp border after. Okay, I'm actually liking this. Very many thin lines, but really very awesome. Actually very easy, so you guys can really do this very easily. Okay, so now I think this one has dried, so I can work on the tree that's supposed to be done earlier. So for this, I'm just going to add a little bit of water to my brush before I use it here. Okay, so this tree is at the back, so it will be a bit lighter. So things that are further away will be more faded. So just add a bit of water to your mixture, and you have your lighter tree. So when you do this first. Don't be like me and forget about it. So just making it lighter suggests that it's at the back of this tree in the front. Okay, but it doesn't have to be too light, just a deep gray. So you could just go over the areas that you find are a bit too light and add another layer. And if you don't want a hard-edged curl, then you can have a softer curl if you want to. You can totally personalize this, create your own version. So again, as always, as I keep reminding you guys, your reference photo is just there to guide you. You don't have to follow it to the letter. I don't. So you can relax, and you don't have to do that too. Okay, so here I think this is dry enough. I will also do the same, do the tree at the back. Okay, you want this because you don't want your work to look like it's just two trees. You want to do it show that there's like a whole forest of trees, which makes it spookier. I actually went to a boarding school with in the mountains, so it's at night it feels like this when there's barely any light, or there's just light from the moon. Every little sound is just making you jump. So I know the feeling of having all the trees surrounding you. It feels like something is going to jump out of you in the dark. I actually miss the forest now that I'm in the city. Okay, so again, I'm just going over the areas that I feel are too light. I don't want it too light because it means it's either the tree is gray or it's much further away. Okay, and here too, I'm going to add another layer. Okay, so this is the nice thing about silhouettes, is you can play around with the background so much and then just do any kind of silhouette. In fact, in this center, you don't have to do a cemetery sort of view. You can have maybe a cat or a silhouette of a witch or a house, up to you. You can change the elements and have fun with it. Okay, so the tree here, there is the tree here. Let's not forget. Okay, and now I'm going to use a really dark black to cover this hill over here. So just using the same brush, I'm just going to add more pigment to my brush, dip it here, and just paint over the whole section. So if you're using a rougher paper, it's going to have some resistance to your brush, so just be prepared for that. But if you're using just cold press, then you'll be fine. In my case, since this is rough, it's a bit harder. So if I go over my rough paper with a dry brush, you'll see more texture. So that's the nice thing about rough paper. If you want to do more texture, it's also much easier, like with my background. And you can always go over your black areas again if you feel like they're too light. Okay, in my case, I'm just bringing the blackness up a bit, and here too, so it doesn't look like it's been chopped off. Okay, and the trees are done, I think. You can always add more later, no pressure, but right now it looks fantastic. They look like they're you know, trying to reach each other and also framing the moon, and just they're above the gate. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a smaller brush now. Not a rigger because I want more control, so I want a smaller round brush. So this is a 1 round. from the fine line set. Okay, so whenever I use a new brush, I like to make sure that it's soaked in the pigment, because when you wet it, it's going to have water. Okay, so I'm going to work on the details of the gate from here because I'm right-handed. And the nice thing about spooky things is that nothing has to look perfect. In fact, the more weird looking they are, the better. So you don't have to stress about doing straight lines, perfect lines. You actually want the weirdness. So even the top of the gate is bent here and there. So you want details like that. You want things to be not perfect. Okay, there you go. They look like, you know, the horn at the end of the tail. Okay, so I'll leave this for last since I can use a bigger brush for that. I'm going to concentrate on the areas that need my smaller brush. Okay, so I chose this detail, like it. You don't have to do all the details in the photo. Again, you can choose which ones you want to go with and which ones you want to do away with. This is the time to have fun with all the elements. You can have a ghost, you can have a witch. So my gates are actually smaller compared to the photo, like less lines. And we're getting there. And how lovely. I like it. It's looking very eerie. Okay, so all the different elements just make things come together. So take your time when you do this. Have fun with the different details. Okay, and the other post. So whatever you find spooky, you can add to this design. We all have different spooky ideas. You can have cobwebs if you want. Now I'm going to decide, should I add a cross? Maybe yes. Okay, let's do that. I think that's a nice detail. Other side too. So the cross has, the tips are broader and it gives it that gothic look. So you might want to also do a cross looking like this, as what you'll be finding in the reference photo. Okay, and let's do the full thing. Let's add the plot, the sign. Okay, and of course, since this is wild, you can also add the grass here and there so it's not bare. And near the trees, don't forget, there will be so you want that detail. Actually, it makes everything come together. Like there are bushes and wild grass. Okay, there's another cross here. So you can start with a basic cross, then you can just add the form after. And it doesn't have to be standing up straight. Again, you want everything to be a little bit out of place. Okay, so I have this like hand, this bush that's like a hand, glowing hand here too. And let's add here too to balance things out. Curls like this remind me of Tim Burton's works. He likes these scroll curls, this detail. Okay, let's add a little cross here. Again, you can always come back to it after tomorrow and see if things are looking the way you want them to look, and you can always again add more details because it's just mainly silhouette, so you can add them anytime. Okay, I'm just making sure this one is dark enough. And let's add a little bit to the moon, just some of the blue that we used earlier. With some green. Okay, so the moon isn't just white. It has craters. So you want that, but not too much. So I add it and then I soften as well. if you find that you've done too much, you can always lift it with your paper towel. Okay, so don't stress. Okay, let's see. You can add other details, bats, ghosts, anything else that you might want to add, but I like it as it is already. It looks spooky without really having to use orange and such, but it's still spooky. So it's mainly the other details, like the trees, the branches look like they're reaching out towards you. So let's just imagine that you have to pass through here. So, you know, just imagine all of those details. And the more like hand-like branches reaching outwards, the more spooky it feels. Okay, so I hope that was clear, and it's actually very, very easy. You just need to do a lot of these silhouettes, but when you get the background color right, everything that you add on top will be perfect because your background is already spooky. Okay, so let me pop back to my face now. There you go. So this is what it looks like, and tomorrow I'm certainly going to probably add or a layer on the darker areas that I feel aren't too dark. So don't worry, it's just black and it can be as dark as you want, except for the trees at the back. So just relax and have fun with the details. Again, for the branches, don't rest your hand on the page. Keep it lifted and allow if you have a rigger brush, it's really the perfect brush for painting the branches. It's I usually switch to it when I need to paint those fine branches, the little branches that stretch out. You can just easily create them naturally, just because of the brush. It will make things so much easier. So if you lift it and you just allow your wrist and your brush to do the work, it's much easier, and you'll be surprised at how easy it can be. Okay, so I hope you'll have fun doing this. And again, you can have fun with your backgrounds. You can create different colors, different mixtures. Anything goes with Halloween as long as it looks like it's misty and spooky. That will be Halloween. There you have it, and thank you for staying with me and for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!